Chair, we're ready to start our meeting.
Okay, great. Good evening. I'm Jimmy Palmieri, Chair of the West Hollywood Human Services Commission. I'd like to welcome you to the Tuesday, April 12th meeting. Land acknowledgement. The West Hollywood Human Services Commission acknowledges that the land on which we gather and that is currently known as the City of West Hollywood is the occupied, unceded, seized territory of the Gabrielino, Tongva, and Gabrielino Kizh peoples. In an effort to protect public health and prevent the spread of COVID-19 coronavirus, AB 361 has authorized public meetings to take place via teleconference because state and local officials are recommending measures to promote social distancing. To view the Human Services Commission meeting, please note that the Zoom platform is the official viewing platform for this meeting. To afford the public with an additional viewing option and in order to expand access to our public meetings, this meeting is also live streamed as a courtesy on YouTube, which is youtube.com/WehoTV. However, because YouTube is a third party and operates independently from the City of West Hollywood, the streaming reliability cannot be guaranteed. I'd like to now call to order the meeting of the April 12th Human Services Commission meeting at 6:02 p.m. Can we get a roll call?
Commissioner Borelli.
Present.
Commissioner Byers.
Present.
Commissioner Darvish.
Present.
Commissioner Davis.
Here.
Commissioner Fryeburg. Commissioner Fryeburg. Vice Chair Meltzer is absent. And Chair Palmieri.
Here. Thank you.
We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Pledge of Allegiance. Derek, would you like to lead the pledge?
Sure. I pledge, everybody raise your hand to your heart. Pledge allegiance
To the
flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Approval of the agenda. Can I get a
Move
motion?
to approve.
Second.
Was that Borelli and Byers?
That's right.
Okay, thank you. Can I get a roll call on that?
Yes. Commissioner Borelli.
Aye.
Commissioner Byers.
Aye.
Commissioner Darvish.
Do you hear me?
Yes.
Great.
Sorry, what is your vote?
Oh, I'm sorry, I said aye.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Davis
Aye.
and Chair Palmieri.
Yes, I have to ask a question. It seems like something is out of order to me, and maybe it's not, but I feel like it is. The approval of the minutes are now under the consent calendar. I didn't
Yes.
hear David. Do we not need to take a roll on that?
No, it is included now, along with the approval of the agenda.
Okay, so if someone needs to abstain, when would be the correct time?
When you vote on the agenda.
Okay. Are we all okay? Yes?
Mr. Chair, I do need to abstain for the minutes
Yes.
from the last meeting.
Okay, so do we have that down?
Yes.
Okay. Stephen, did you have, Commissioner Davis, did you have something?
I just wanted to point that Commissioner Fryeburg came in and the recording secretary skipped her. So I would like her to make sure she knows she's here.
My apologies. I do have her as here. Commissioner Fryeburg.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay. So it seems like we are up to 3A, public hearing.
Chair, we have public
It's
comment.
public.
Oh, I'm sorry, you have how many public comments?
We have one public comment.
All right.
And I just want to remind everyone, if you wish to make a public comment, to please use the raised hand feature in the Zoom application. If you see, or I'm sorry, please turn on your video and audio to make your public comment.
I'm sorry, Joyce. I thought that they were all for 3A. I'm sorry that I skipped that. Who is the public comment?
We have David Nash. And I just want to say there's 3 minutes for public comment. If you want to go on camera, you can share your video, and please remember to unmute yourself. Do we have David Nash?
He'll need to unmute himself, or somebody will need to unmute him.
So you're in the room? We're gonna go to our next public comment. If you are going to be speaking, just raise your hand. We have a couple of, there's an iPhone with their hand raised. I'm gonna ask you to unmute yourself. iPhone, are you able to unmute yourself? Looks like we're having technical difficulties. Rob Lester, I'm gonna ask you to unmute yourself if you'd like to go on camera. You have 3 minutes.
This is David Nash. Can you hear me?
David, we're calling Robert
Yes.
right now. So give us a
Okay.
second. We'll call you after that. Thank you so
Okay.
much. Rob, you have 3 minutes. Thank you so much for making a public comment.
Sure, thank you. I'm speaking on behalf of the Mental Health Foundation. I'd like to thank the City of West Hollywood and the Human Services Commission for the support you guys have provided to us over the years. You've been vitally important in our mission to mitigate the impact of HIV on the community, on the LGBTQ community here in West Hollywood, through our HIV treatment and prevention services. As you're considering what to prioritize in the coming cycle, I would like to point out that despite our being 42 years into epidemic, that there's still tremendous unmet need for care services in the City of West Hollywood. We have a express sexual health, HIV testing, and STD testing and treatment clinic here in West Hollywood on the corner on Santa Monica near Sweetser, just across from City Hall. At that location, over the past 6 months, we have provided PEP services to 48 individuals. That's a dramatic increase from what we've seen in the past, both especially during COVID and even prior to COVID. It's a substantial increase. I think one of the reasons that has been such a successful location for us is because we're open from 11 a.m. until 8 p.m. So patients who would not otherwise be able to get services except perhaps by going to the emergency room can come to us and get linked to PEP. We also provide PrEP services. That's part of what we're funded for currently. We provide PrEP services to about between 400 and 500 West Hollywood patients each year. And I thought that with all the PrEP services we were providing and the tremendous numbers that we would see a decline in PEP.
Did Rob freeze?
Appears so.
I believe he might have lost his internet.
Okay, I'd be willing to give him another minute if he comes back on, if we're okay with moving on from there.
David Nash, are you in the room? Would you please unmute yourself?
Yes.
Okay, we'll
Yes,
start
I'm
your
here.
public. We can hear you. We're going to start your time now. Thank you so much for coming.
Okay, thank you. My name is David Nash. I am on the Disability Advisory Board, but I'm not speaking on their behalf. Just think of me as a grateful West Hollywood resident who receives benefits and social services unique to living in West Hollywood. I'd like to speak on 4 topics quickly. The first one is Ambience Transportation. I love the program. I think it's the best thing that's happened in West Hollywood in the 20 years I've been here. However, I am concerned. I've had complaints from neighbors who have to travel to Culver City for hydrotherapy. And I personally go to the Braille Institute when they're open for one class a week. One class a week round trip to the Braille Institute would cost around $50. So 4 times a month, that would eat up to $200. I would like to see the funding to Ambience increase and the amount of miles and trips available for the users increase. I don't think they should go too many places or use too many miles. I'd also like to speak in support of more funding for DCRC. I think they provide great services. I'd like to see them in a better permanent home in West Hollywood. But I believe the amount of funding that they're funded to is less than $70,000. And considering the amount of work that they have to do, the programs that they manage, I think they could use more money. I'd also like to speak in favor of more affordable housing for people with disabilities. My understanding is that the city's list and the West Hollywood community housing list are closed, and closed means no access at all. So I'd like to see more affordable housing. Finally, a topic that's been on my mind for more than 20 years, I'd like to see access to social services simplified so that you would make one application one time a year to one agency. And if you meet the qualifications that are about the same qualifications as every other agency, that's done, that's it, you'd be through. And then one agency could reach out to the others and let them know you're qualified. And when you contact that agency, they could check your credentials or your qualifications from that once a year roll in and say, thank you. Hi, David, how can we help you with services? I had someone just living in my building that lived here for 6 months, and due to his illness and tiredness from chemotherapy, he never accessed one of the available social services. None of them. It was just too complicated, and he was frankly too ill and too tired. So I'd really like to see the Human Services Commission work with the county's HIV Commission and other service agencies. Thank you, to simplify the application process. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Nash.
Chair Palmieri.
Yes.
So this
Chair?
is David. Yep. Go ahead, Jenny.
Just as a reminder, this is a public comment. And everyone who is in the room, I see we have a lot of attendees. If you have a comment for tonight's item for public comment, please raise your hand and speak, and we'll call you up to speak. Each speaker has 3 minutes, but this is item 1D for public comment. If individuals are here in the room and they'd like to speak under item 3 for public hearing, that will be coming up shortly.
David, is that what you were going to point out?
Yes, just wanted to clarify. This is general public comment.
It looks like we have a public comment in the room under staff meeting. Staff meeting, would you please unmute yourself? And if you like, go on camera and speak for 3 minutes. Let me know when you're ready.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Your 3 minutes.
Yes,
We're ready.
We have more than one person that would like to comment. Will you guys want them to go one at a time?
I would like some clarification. Is this a public comment or is this in regard to the public hearing this evening?
No, public comment.
Okay, so Jenny, you'd have to advise, do each of them get 3 minutes or is there 3 minutes for one phone call as it seems?
Have you registered prior to the meeting?
So yes, my name is Lisa Marie Ceballos and I'm the case manager for the TRUE program at City of West Hollywood. And I was able to share this great news of what was going on today with some of my clients, and they wanted to come and be able to give their public comment on behalf of how they would like to contribute about this meeting with the City of West Hollywood.
Okay,
And I
so,
believe this is for the public hearing, Jenny. So for item 3A, the Trans Latino Coalition would like to speak.
Okay, great. If I believe I have your email address, is it, can you repeat your email address for me so I can reach out to you and get everyone's names?
Yeah, it's Lisa Marie Ceballos. I mean, Lisa A at
Okay.
translatinacoalition.org.
Great. I'm going to sidebar you and ask you for everyone's name so we can call you up in order. There's 5 speakers ahead of you. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Joyce, do we have any other public comment that is not under 3A?
We do not have any additional public comment. We're ready to move forward.
Okay. All right, so now we'll move to 3A, Human Services of West Hollywood. We will now hear public hearing item 3A. The Human Services Commission will hold a public hearing on social service priorities, the initial activity of the city's social service funding process for 2022 to 2025, community input on social services needs and priorities. The public hearing is now open. Are there any disclosures from commission members? This is an opportunity for commission members to disclose ex parte contacts, written, oral, and in person, conflicts of interest, etc. If you have any, can you please raise your hand so I can see it and you can divulge it? Okay, it seems like there is none. Social Services Manager David Juni, how is this hearing noticed?
The public hearing was noticed as required by law.
Thank you. Will the staff representative please introduce yourself and present the staff report?
Thank you so much, Chair Palmieri. As I'd mentioned, I'm David Juni. I'm the manager of the city's Social Services Division. As you previously stated, the Human Services Commission this evening will hold a hearing on social services priorities. This is one of the initial activities of this city's social services funding process. This is for the 2022 through 2025 funding cycle. The City of West Hollywood has been supporting social services programs for the community by contracting with nonprofit organizations since July of 1985. The City Council has a firm commitment to enhancing the quality of life of the city's community members through meeting their social services needs. For the purposes of social services funding, a West Hollywood community member is a resident, that's a person who has a West Hollywood address, also a person who works in the city, a person who attends school in the city, a property owner, or a person who is homeless and spends the majority or a significant amount of time in the city. The City of West Hollywood will allocate approximately $5.2 million per year in this funding cycle to provide these vital services. In addition, the funding goes towards addressing public health concerns through education and other vital services, and all in an effort to improve community members' quality of life. Notices about the social services funding process have been sent to all of the currently funded programs and agencies, and also to agencies who have indicated interest in the funding process. A list of the agencies and programs not currently funded by the city that received information about the RFP process is included as an attachment to the staff report. And with that, I will turn it back over to the chair.
Okay, we will now receive comment from any persons in the audience who wish to speak on this matter. Each person may address the Human Services Commission for a maximum of 3 minutes. Well, can I please get an idea of the number of how many folks we have to speak on this, Joyce?
Yes, currently we have 4 people that are signed up to speak, and we may have some additional ones that are here that will raise their hand.
Okay.
So I just want to.
All right, I'm just looking for a timetable. Each person may address the Human Services Commission for a maximum of 3 minutes. If you did not sign up to speak on this item, please use the raise hand feature to indicate that you wish to speak. And Joyce, you'll call them in the order that you received them or that their hands were raised.
Okay, the first person that we have is Hermione Beard, a community member and client. And you have 3 minutes to speak. Please go ahead and go on camera, and you may unmute yourself at this time.
Ms. Beard, you're muted. But does it seem as though she is frozen? Yes? No?
We're trying to get her on.
Hello?
Hermine?
If she comes back into the room, we can certainly hear her then.
So our next speaker is Rachel Resnick. And Rachel, you have 3 minutes. You may go on camera and unmute. And your time starts now.
Thank you, Joyce. Hello, everyone. Lovely to be with you again this evening. Thank you to the Human Services Commission for taking some of the first steps in the social service funding process. My name is Rachel Resnick. I'm the Chief Program Officer at NCJW LA. We are grateful for the city's support for the past 2.5 years of this grant cycle. This grant cycle, to put it euphemistically, was very different than we anticipated it would be when funding began on October 1st, 2019. Historically, in a standard 3-year period, our rental assistance program served between 50 and 80 people. Since October 2019 until today, in the current 3-year grant period, we have served more than 500 people with rental assistance. During the pandemic, many community members were accessing social service programs for the first time since they moved to the city of West Hollywood. And while many of our clients and program participants are stable in other areas of their lives, nutrition and food access, physical and mental health care, et cetera, the past 2 years have really highlighted a need for income and employment stability for many community members. The city has demonstrated a commitment to a higher minimum wage, which is a great step. So many people living and working in the city were barely making enough money to have housing stability, often supplementing their regular jobs with additional income streams before their places of employment shut down in March or April 2020, and they were laid off or furloughed. Many of these rental assistance recipients had little, to no financial safety net after just 2 weeks of not working. We continue to gladly refer people to other social service agencies as well, to Bates Sedec for legal support, to JVS for employment opportunities, but there is a continued and ongoing need for protection for these community members, many of whom are in the service industry and provide valuable work to maintain the city's vibrancy. We are committed to supporting those who are making it a priority to live and work in West Hollywood, and we look forward to the opportunity to support innovative rental assistance programming to West Hollywood community members. Thank you so much, and we'll be seeing a lot of you over the next 5 to 6 months, and we look forward to working together. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you very much for your comments, Rachel. Next up, we have Marina Berkman. Marina, if you feel comfortable, you may reveal yourself on your video, and please unmute, and you have 3 minutes to speak. And next after you will be Yola Dore.
Okay, do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Good afternoon, commissioners. Good afternoon, city staff members. My name is Marina Berkman. I'm the director of West Hollywood Comprehensive Service Center Program of Jewish Family Service. And tonight I'm speaking on behalf of our clients who couldn't attend this meeting for different reasons. Some are not comfortable sharing their personal information. Some are just not tech savvy to do that on Zoom. Some just don't speak enough English to testify for themselves. And so far in the first 6 months, we assisted about 500 community members by connecting them to essential services. For example, there have been big challenges in accessing some benefit providers such as CalFresh or IHSS. And dozens of our clients have been having frustrating experiences by not being able to connect with the representatives of those agencies. So the same was with Housing is Key and Medi-Cal, and our social worker assisted these clients by reaching out to liaisons on those of those benefit providers and advocated for the clients and managed to connect them to necessary services. So this is one of the priorities, the case management, which is essential in maintaining an independent lifestyle for our seniors and younger adults who have health challenges. Another essential need that we observe, and it is based on our experience, is providing homemaking and personal care for those who cannot afford to pay for that out of pocket, and they are not eligible for governmental assistance such as IHSS. And this type of assistance is essential, but the hourly rates go up every year. And so we can provide fewer and fewer hours of these services based on the current allocation. As you probably know, as of July 1st, the rates will go up again. And we really believe that this is an essential service and it needs to be funded at a higher level so we can assist our community members in maintaining independent lifestyle. Thank you so much for considering this essential service.
Thank you, Marina.
And next up, we have Yola Duray. Yola, if you're comfortable, you may open up your video and please unmute yourself. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Good evening, Chair, Commissioners, staff, and honored guests. Yola Duray, a 30-plus year resident of West Hollywood, and tonight I'm speaking for myself. I've mentioned it before, but let me say again, catastrophic illnesses, please hear me. Everyone who's been through COVID understands. Everyone. There is so much we need to fund this year more than any other year. Catastrophic illnesses aren't just COVID. It's cancer. It's HIV. It's so many things. People need counseling, case management. They need financial assistance. People have gone hungry. People have lost their jobs. They need you to put the pencil to this and help them out. But a new category has come to my attention that I don't believe we're covering, and that is the younger set. The younger set that was so traumatized by being home for so long, by hearing all about violence, maybe violence in their own home, domestic disputes, PTSD type issues. I wonder, do we have counseling services that cover these young people? Do we have organizations that can help? Please widen the scope and cover all of the residents of West Hollywood. There are so many. And after today's incident in New York, after the situation overseas, people need to speak to someone. Everyone does. I have hopes and I have belief that you're going to carry it through and do the best job ever. Thank you for your dedication.
Thank you, Yola.
Thank you, Yola. Our next speaker would be Lena Del Rio, followed by El Romero. Lena, are you in the room? Would you please unmute yourself?
Hello?
Hi, we hear you. You have
Yes.
3 minutes. We hear you. You have 3 minutes. Thank you so much.
Okay, give me 1 second. We're trying to have our screen show, but we can't sharing. Is that okay?
We have a lot of speakers tonight. So
Okay, here goes.
Thank you so much. We have about 10 people after you. Thank you.
Okay, she's gonna speak.
Hi, my name is Lena Del Rio. I live in the city of West Hollywood for 42 years. And what I wanted to say to the whole committee is that in all of those years that I lived there, I never seen any help for the transgender community. And recently, when the pandemic happened, someone called me because there's supposed to be a program to help me with my rent. Someone called me and they never called me back. And I found out later that the program was closed. And what I'm asking is to beg, please, to help the Trans Latina Coalition because they're the only ones who are helping us through all this time.
We can go to the next one.
The next one is El.
Hi, I'm El Rome. I just wanted to say that I have worked in the city of West Hollywood as a hostess, and being visible, I did experience a lot of discrimination. I actually met my caseworker in working in West Hollywood, and she has assisted me with a housing opportunity, with some financial support. And I also wanted to share that I don't feel there is enough financial support, housing opportunities, which are so needed in West Hollywood. Also, I've spent so much precious time in West Hollywood, the clubs, the restaurants, and I feel like the transgender community invest their money in your city. But we want to see you to invest your money in us because we are among your community. We are in the West Hollywood community. We're dancing there, we're eating there, we're building lives there, and it's actually one of the only places I feel safe in LA is West Hollywood, but I don't feel supported by you. And I would love for you to do more and support organizations like the Trans Latina Coalition, who really have our backs, especially trans women of color. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Our next speaker, hopefully I'm saying your name right, Odalis Rodriguez, followed by Suzanne Mendes. Thank you.
So Odalis Rodriguez mainly speaks Spanish. Do we have a translator?
No problem.
Okay, Odalis, ¿puedes hablar español, hermosa?
Okay. Nosotras las transexuales tenemos un gran apoyo gracias a Trans Latina por todas las oportunidades que nos están dando en este momento. En la ciudad de West Hollywood nunca nos han apoyado en nada. Hemos sufrido mucho acoso de parte de policías, de gente y mucha discriminación. Y nosotros necesitamos un apoyo para sentirnos más seguras dentro de la comunidad de West Hollywood.
And I think that's it for Odalis. Hello?
Yes, would you like to translate, please?
So you guys don't have a translator?
We don't have one on staff.
Okay, so Odalis, ¿cuántos años llevas viviendo?
Tengo 22 años viviendo.
Odalis has 22 years living in the city of West Hollywood. They share that, there's not enough services for the trans and non-binary community. They have experienced as a whole community a lot of discrimination, sometimes from the cops, people in West Hollywood and ¿qué más se dice?
Y que la organización de Translatina es la única.
And that
que ha recibido apoyo.
the Translatina Coalition has been actually one of the resources that have improved her quality of life to be better.
Y ella quisiera que la
And
apoyo-
she would
sentir
like
más apoyo de parte de la
to have
comunidad de
more
West
support from the community of West Hollywood. Okay, now we can start. ¿Es todo lo que quieres decir, Emma? Yeah, that's about it for Odalis.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Suzanne Mendes, followed by Lisa. Thank you so much. You both have 3 minutes. The time starts now.
Mi nombre es Suzanne Mendes. Yo soy trabajadora para Translatina Coalition. Trabajo con mi compañera Lisa Ceballo en Auris para la comunidad de la ciudad de West Hollywood. Y creo que el tema es la importancia que tienen las personas transgéneros en recibir los servicios de las.
So I'm going to translate that first piece. My
Sounds
name is Suzanne Mendes. I am working with Lisa Marie Ceballos, which is me. I'm doing outreach in the city of West Hollywood. And I'm here to bring the importance of
la importancia que es trabajar para la comunidad transgénero en West Hollywood, porque cuando vamos a hacer outreach vemos a bastantes chicas transgéneros que no tienen una vivienda, que necesitan un lugar donde estar y recibir alimentos, el cual esa es la importancia.
So as doing outreach with Lisa, we see the much need that the trans community needs and the care and for them to be connected into services.
Incluso cuando vamos con mi amiga, de parte de mi programa, yo brindo soporte para mi amiga, entonces vemos a bastantes personas que son homeless y creo que eso es bien importante que se enfoque en la comunidad transgénero para que podamos ser vistas como la demás comunidad, ya que es en la ciudad de West Hollywood.
And also when we're doing outreach, we see a lot of trans women that are experiencing homelessness, and it would be good if we were to invest more in the lives of trans women that are like being homeless in the city of West Hollywood to give them a better quality of life because it's important.
Ya que por la pandemia se ha visto bien
because
afectada.
of the epidemic, the trans community has been really affected. And that's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I say my turn?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you so much.
The time starts now. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon to all of you. I am so happy and honored to be here today in this space with all of you. I'm really proud to say that the TRUE program has been a really successful program in the city of West Hollywood, has changed many lives, has bring so much resources to the individuals that are and continue to be part of the TRUE program. But I think that the job does not stop there. It has to continue so it can reach out to all the community in West Hollywood. As a case manager doing outreach in West Hollywood, I came across a lot of elderly trans and non-binary community that have been residents of West Hollywood that have never even heard of trans services. And I would love to continue to doing the work to improve my community's style of life. And I think that it's important for the city of West Hollywood to focus intentionally in the lives of trans women to make a difference. And I really, really want all of you guys to consider, what does it mean to really invest in the trans lives? Because everybody can say that they're supporters, but doing the work is different. And being intentional is different. So investing in more resources than just the TRUE program, like other organizations, other resources that are specifically targeted to trans and non-binary services is essential. And I would like for all of you guys to really think about that when it comes down to being intentional. And that's about it.
Thank you so much. I know we have a lot of public hearing speakers tonight, so thank you everyone for being patient. We're going in order. Our next speaker is
So next up we have Hermione, who has reconnected. So Hermione, if you can unmute yourself, and you have 3 minutes to speak, and your time starts right now.
Good evening. I thank the Human Services Commission for allowing me to speak tonight. I am here to speak on my personal experience with Jewish Family Service, JFS. I am a resident of West Hollywood and a recipient of their services. The telecheck calls every day have enriched my life. The people who volunteer with Jewish Family Services, they're selfless people who volunteer their time every day to check on senior citizens to make sure that they're okay. Olga is the person who is in charge of telecheck. She goes over and beyond. She has a real heart for people. And I also have been a recipient of their mental health help and also their Partner Connect. I want the City of West Hollywood to know, and Social Services, the Human Services Commission to know that their money is well spent with Jewish Family Service. I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, our next speaker will be Bambi Salcedo. Bambi, if you could unmute yourself, you have 3 minutes to speak, and you may begin now.
Greetings, beautiful people. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here with all of you. It's really an honor that even if through this platform, that I get to see amazing people who are doing incredible work. My name is Bambi Salcedo, and I am the president and the CEO of the Trans-Latino Coalition. And, you know, just hearing, unfortunately, we're not able to see the people who spoke before us and the people who have been supporting through the amazing opportunity that we had being funded by the City of West Hollywood to be able to provide essential and critical services to transgender, non-conforming, and intersex people who live, work, or congregate or spend the majority of their time in the City of West Hollywood. You know, I just listening to the people, like it really fills my heart to, you know, to hear that the work that we're doing has impacted their lives. And although we have been honored and grateful that we have received funding from the City of West Hollywood, we want to also ask that the investment that it's put into the lives of trans people, that it's meaningful, and particularly especially for programs who are excelling and really addressing the specific needs of the residents and the people who are part of the City of West Hollywood. I'm so grateful that we have an amazing team like Lisa Marie Ceballos, and you know, Swani, who is also part of the outreach team here with us, not necessarily funded by the City of West Hollywood, but you know, we work together to make sure that we address the needs, issues, and the lives of all transgender and non-conforming individuals. So I'm asking that as you go through this process, that you really consider the investment that needs to be allocated for trans people, and certainly invest in the organizations that are doing the work. And we as an organization, you know, never closed our doors throughout this pandemic. And the reason why was because we understand how our community continues to be discriminated against, who are the last ones to receive services when they need those services. And we are committed into making sure that our community receives the support in order to change their quality of life. I'm really honored that I get to be part of this amazing organization, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you so much. Next up, we have Michael Mcfadden, followed by Ashley Weinberger. You each have 3 minutes to speak. And Michael, your time begins right now.
Hello, good evening. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to
speak this evening. My name is Michael Mcfadden. I'm a resident of West Hollywood, as well as I'm the Associate Director of Programs at the LA LGBT Center in their Senior Services Department. I just want to say a thank you to the Commission and to the staff for the financial support and organizational support that you've provided the center, specifically Senior Services, through this most recent contract, as well as requesting both ongoing and continued financial support moving forward. The Senior Services Department is the only LGBTQ comprehensive provider to seniors within the LA area, and it's really providing essential services. This was particularly predominant or prevalent during the pandemic, with the increased need for just basic essential services like food, showers, laundry, just access to available resources like even like internet and phones. The senior center provides case management, housing support, linkage to medical care, as well as essential mental health support. But one of the things that also popped up, which is something we know for seniors as a whole, but also specifically for LGBTQ seniors, is the need for social connection and to combat social isolation. And the services that are provided at the center not only provide that essential need for basic needs, but also provides the emotional support and emotional connection for community. So again, we just want to say thank you again for all the support that you've provided us historically, and I'm requesting both advocating for additional support moving forward. And last but not least, just want to also address, there's a tremendous amount of energy and excitement around ending the HIV epidemic, which we are fully invested in, and I am fully invested in. But also just want to acknowledge and recognize the importance of maintaining ongoing support for those who are impacted by HIV, particularly long-term survivors, and making sure that we're maintaining a commitment to them, both around their medical, mental health, and social well-being. So thank you again for the opportunity to speak, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you, Michael. Who is next?
Next, we have Ashley Weinberger.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ashley Weinberger. I'm the Deputy Director of Friends Research Institute, who has been serving the West Hollywood community for over 25 years now. Currently, we are providing 2 service programs to the West Hollywood community. The first one is an HIV risk reduction street outreach program, and the second is a methamphetamine program, mostly for gay men or bisexual or men having sex with men individuals. And then additionally, we provide supplemental case management services for participants of both of these programs. And I'm sure, as all of you are aware, the past 2 years have been very difficult for all of us, not to mention the participants that we serve. And then due to this, we have really noticed that we've seen a steep increase of individuals seeking methamphetamine recovery services due to the stress of the COVID pandemic. We've had a lot of people who we had participants in our program, 10, 15, 20 years ago, and then they're back because they relapsed after all of this time. Which has been really hard to see. So we're seeing a really, really sharp increase in relapse for methamphetamine. And then, additionally, we were able in the past year to provide case management services to over 50 LGBTQ identifying individuals in the past year, which is very exciting that we were able to assist that many people. But we're seeing, once again, a demand in case management for case management services and methamphetamine outpatient services. These 2 years have been very difficult for everyone that we talk to. Our street outreach team, they're talking to people and they're engaging. And before, they might have seen 1 or 2 needs or barriers for people, and now they're seeing 3, 4, 5 things that people are identifying that their lives have changed over the past 2 years. And so, now that people especially are out due to the low COVID cases, we're seeing more and more people that our street team can engage with. And so it's nice that we're able to engage with people once again, but this also is coming with really identifying all of the needs that we're seeing from people, between food, housing, employment services, legal services, medical services, linkage to PrEP, linkage to HIV care. You know, there is a lot. I could really go on, and it's a whole long list, but I don't, you know, I only have 3 minutes. But truly, out of all of this, we need more people to be able to provide those services. We're seeing such a sharp increase in demand, and without the individuals to provide them, then their demands are just going to get more and more on top of it. So, you know, I've been in several community provider meetings where I hear over and over from not just my organization, but tons of other organizations who provide services to West Hollywood, where the number one thing they hear is burnout, and they have open positions, they can't fill them. We need, you know, I'm so grateful for all of the funding that we've had from the West Hollywood Human Services programs, or, you know, funding, but we need to be able to take care of our people.
Thank you, Ashley.
Next up, we have Clifford Roberts, and then after Clifford, we have Richard Rosenthal. So once Clifford finishes, Richard, you can go ahead and start. You each have 3 minutes, and Clifford, you may start right now.
Very much. Good evening, social service commissioners, West Hollywood staff, community members and partners. Great to be here. What a change a few years has made since this last query into providing services for West Hollywood. Again, Cliff Roberts, program manager for the WehoMIT under the auspices of Step Up on Second. As been echoed here, I want to echo what's been voiced here, is this implications that the pandemic has brought on. We have seen an increase in mental health needs. We are happy to continue, and we hope to continue, our amazing relationship with the City of West Hollywood in providing those comprehensive mental health services on the street where our members are at. Really, our goal is to create a safe holding environment in which they feel safe to disclose to us. And that really allows us the ability to determine what services to provide our folks. This is our second 3-year contract with the City of West Hollywood. We've been lucky to have amazing co-contracted entities to work with in these collaborative efforts to help our West Hollywood community members. My team is a microcosm of the very individuals that we serve in the City of West Hollywood. We field calls from everybody from those who are housed in the business community, social services staff, and we try to respond with immediacy and in an expeditious manner. The pandemic proved to be challenging. We were still out providing street services. We hope and look forward to another 3-year contract because we see the need so, it's so apparent. We've noticed it really a rise in suicidality, whether it be real intent or posturing. Nevertheless, we take this very seriously. We're hoping to continue the work with substance misusers, and we have historically worked with the LGBTQ community with cultural humility, recognizing the unique challenges that these communities face daily, along with our senior members, along with folks with disabilities. We are deeply committed to assisting these folks, and oftentimes we're assisting these folks behind the scenes where we're not seen. We appreciate the anonymity of our clients, and again, their unique challenges. They try to navigate a more complex world. I think on that note, I want to just remind folks that we provide psychiatric services, psychiatrists on board who provides med support, clinical targeted case management, psychosocial services, individual therapy. Thank you so much. Take care, everybody.
Thank you, Clifford. Who's coming up next?
Richard, you may go ahead and start.
All right. Oh, hi. Thank you for the opportunity and the commission for hearing about the need for financial help in the West Hollywood community. I'm speaking as a private person. I do work in West Hollywood, and I am interested in making a comment about the importance of the services I receive at the LA LGBT Center Senior Services Program. During the pandemic, the isolation that was for everyone, I'm sure, if it wasn't for the Senior Services Department, it would have been just terrible. Being a senior and HIV positive, and there aren't really too many venues that are supportive of people like me. And over there at the Senior Center, it is quite welcoming, and the work that they do really is beneficial. And it's not only some of the things that they do. The guy who was from the center already mentioned a bunch of things. I have a little list here about some of the things they offer, like daily lunches and case management and social activities that really are helpful to me. Support groups, employment assistance, housing, housing navigation, food pantry, and other things. And thank you so much for the opportunity to share that with you guys.
Thank you, Richard.
Okay, we have two more with raised hands. We have Brian Rogers and Rob Lester. Both of you, I'm sorry, we'll start with Brian Rogers. You both have 3 minutes to speak. And after Brian finishes, Rob, you can go ahead and start. Brian, your time starts right now.
Hi, and thank you to the commission. My name is Brian Rogers, and myself, along with Rob, both work at the Men's Health Foundation. And Rob, I'm sure will continue to give some of those concrete numbers, but I just wanted to share a few stories about the services that are being offered at the Men's Health Foundation and how we could continue to use the support from the West Hollywood Commission. So this red phone here, I receive calls at any time regarding people who are in emergency need of PEP. And the other week, I received a call from a young man who was really concerned about a potential risk exposure. He had just started participating in sex work and really needed some help. And we were able to get him linked up with our new Express Clinic on Santa Monica Boulevard. And he had a great experience being able to get linked to PrEP very easily. We're already finding with our Express Clinic that the growth has been exponential every month. We're seeing more and more patients, and we really have reached our capacity quite quickly. So there's a definite need that we have met very quickly and can continue to meet. I think if we can continue to expand, particularly that Express Clinic, but also our PrEP services and our PEP services, there is a lot to benefit there, because there's plenty of people who call this phone, who call into our other ways of setting an appointment, that definitely need both preventive services as well as HIV management. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm not going to take too long because y'all guys heard me a little bit earlier, so I just wanted to add a few facts. I mentioned earlier the Express Clinic we have in Santa Monica that Brian mentioned. The population we see there, we've been seeing about 20% of the patients who come in are positive for gonorrhea and about 15% are positive for chlamydia. So we're dealing with a very high risk population, a lot of younger people. And so obviously getting them on PrEP is vitally important. Also, not only is getting them on PrEP important because it prevents HIV, but we had a sort of a special situation a few weeks ago. A patient came in, was asking for PrEP. We did the INSTI test, the point of care test, came back negative. And so we drew the labs, getting started on PrEP and started them the same day PrEP. The confirmatory test came back negative, but his viral load test came back at over 1 million copies per deciliter. So this guy he had just been infected less than 7 days prior. Because he came in for PrEP, we were able to get him, we were able to track him down, get him on treatment right away. And he's a young guy, he's 24. But you know, anyway, it was upsetting to see somebody that young, but it's also sort of a special opportunity because we got somebody who, and got him diagnosed at the very beginning. So reducing the probability of future transmissions and also getting him to care as early as possible. So the additional support you guys provide will be very helpful. The city provides will be very helpful for making sure we can continue to provide these vital services. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Rob. Is there anyone else?
Yes, we have Jamie Baker with the hand raised. Jamie, you may go ahead and speak. You have 3 minutes.
Hello, everyone. It's lovely to see you. I was not going to comment, but that's not in my nature. So I just wanted to say funding for HIV is still very much needed. Last December, Dr. Aaron Celius presented the results of a 3-year study on HIV and stigma, and the results were less than stellar for the city. I don't think anyone was pleased with the results, and we weren't any closer to getting to HIV 0 than we were when the study started. So funding is still very much needed in that area. And to illustrate that point, a couple of months ago, the sister of a West Hollywood resident reached out to us because her brother was recently released from the hospital with AIDS, old school, full blown, very few T cells, but he was released with no support and no resources. And she called us to see what to do. This person, as I said, a West Hollywood resident, was highly educated and employed and insured. And yet he did not address his HIV. Whether it was stigma or denial, I don't know. But it went unaddressed and it cost him his life. And in 2022, that is inexcusable. So we need to continue to do more. And that's all of us together, all of the agencies as a team. But HIV, as much as we want it to be over, it's not. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you, Jamie. Are there any other speakers?
This is the meeting secretary, and I just want to know if anyone else out there would like to add a comment under the public hearing. Please use the raised hand feature if you'd like to comment. It looks like we have no other comments. Chair Palmieri,
Thank you
you
very
may
much.
continue with the meeting.
Thank you very much. Do any members of the commission have any questions of staff or wish to make any comments before I close the public hearing? This is not an opportunity for discussion, nor is it an opportunity to speak to the providers. It's an opportunity to make a comment or to speak to staff about something. And I'd like to call on you. I'll just go in order as I'm seeing you. I'm not trying to put anyone under the spotlight. Stephen Davis, Commissioner Davis.
No, thank you.
Commissioner Byers,
No, thank you.
Commissioner Darvish,
No comments. Thank you.
Commissioner Borelli,
No, thank you to all the participants.
Commissioner Fryeburg.
Yeah, I just had one question. When Ashley was speaking, my computer kind of froze when she said where she was from or what organization she was connected to. Is there a way I can get what organization she's from?
I think she said Friends, am I correct?
Friends Community Center.
What is it?
Friends Community Center.
Thank you. That's it.
I would just like to thank everyone for speaking. It's always important for me, and I'm sure my colleagues, to hear what you have to say. This will be the conclusion of the public hearing, and I will now close it. Thank you. Unfinished business needs assessment of number 5A, needs assessment of focusing on the social service needs of the community members of color. Final report. And I believe we're going directly to Dr. Celius for this.
That's correct.
Is he in the room?
I believe he is.
I'm here. Welcome, everyone.
Hi.
So let me see. Okay, so again, welcome. I am really happy to be here to report the findings of the needs assessment focusing on community members of color. I am joined by my colleagues, Dr. Kahari Brown, Patricia Ortega, and Brandon Harrison. So tonight, we've heard many public comments about the critical role that social services play in the lives of West Hollywood community members, LGBTQ, older adults, and people living with disabilities. And this evening, we're going to focus on community members of color who are also represented in all of the groups that I just mentioned with cross-sectional and intersecting identities. So the needs assessment is really about quality of life and what supports quality of life. As you know, quality of life has no single definition, but it often refers to a person's ability to get an education, earn income from employment, get employed, find housing and keep housing, and access health resources, have health, and also have food, as well as safety from threats. As you know, these are the things that really come up with, that make up quality of life. And the social services that the city of West Hollywood funds, as David Jenny mentioned, $5.2 million every year, help improve the quality of life, as we've heard from so many speakers this evening. The question then, when we talk about race and the intersection of social services, is how much does a person's race and ethnicity really determine their quality of life? And the answer is a lot, a little, and it really depends. It depends on what type of social network a person has. It depends on where a person lives and where they grew up. But overall, race does matter. When we look at race in terms of these quality of life indicators, we see, with the exception of many Asians, that compared to whites, people of color have worse outcomes in income, employment, education, food security, housing stability, access to health insurance, access to health care, as well as health outcomes. And many of these disparities you can find more information about in the full report, which was provided last week. So then the needs assessment. The disparities that I just mentioned really urged the City Council of West Hollywood, to conduct this needs assessment focusing on community members of color with some basic objectives. One, to measure the interest and utilization of West Hollywood funded social services. Two, to identify the unmet needs of social services among community members of color. Explore the possible access barriers that community members of color face, and then also propose solutions to those barriers. And what we're gonna do tonight is talk a little bit about the methods and then talk about the recommendations. We know time is limited, and so we're gonna keep it focused as possible, as well as opening it up for conversation and questions. So to execute this needs assessment, we first looked at social service utilization by community members of color. This led us to conduct interviews with social service agencies, those with higher and lower utilization by community members of color. We did this so that we can have an understanding of what are some of the best practices when it comes to making sure that all community members across race have equal access to services. We then conducted focus groups and interviews with community members of color. This included 2 interviews in Spanish, and we conducted surveys, over 500 surveys with West Hollywood community members. And I'm sure everyone on this call knows what a community member is, but just to reiterate, that is someone who lives, works, owns property, attends school, or spends a significant amount of time unhoused in the city. And now I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues and Dr. Kahari Brown to talk about the first two recommendations.
Right. Thank you for inviting us to speak on this very important topic. Our first recommendation is to develop an awareness campaign for people of color working in West Hollywood. This recommendation stems from our finding that people of color are less aware of municipal funded social services than are their white counterparts. This gap is particularly pronounced among those who work but do not live in the city. This is concerning because relative to city residents, non-residential workers earn lower incomes and need more help meeting their basic life necessities. That said, we recommend that the city and its nonprofit partners coordinate on an outreach campaign, which includes people of color, to educate workers about social services. Our second recommendation is to expand food and nutrition programming for non-resident community members. This recommendation stems from two of our findings. One, community members of color who work but do not live in West Hollywood are much more likely than West Hollywood residents to A, live in low-income households, and B, to report an interest in food and nutrition support. Two, it's also the case that the city's homeless population is disproportionately Black and Latinx. However, many of the city's current food and nutrition programs are limited to West Hollywood residents. That said, we recommend that the city expand its food and nutrition services to include non-resident community members. And in doing so, we also recommend that service providers have people of color on staff and employ staff persons that possess the cultural competency to serve unhoused persons in an uplifting manner.
And now we'll turn it over to Patricia Ortega.
Hello, everybody. My name is Patricia Ortega, and I assisted in project management for Maroon Society. So our third recommendation is to develop racial equity-based service utilization strategy. The problem that we saw is that community members of color use city-funded social services at a lower rate than their white counterparts. At minimum, the underutilization rate is 5.7%. However, this estimate we believe is incomplete because it is based only on the number of residents of color when it should be based on the total number of community members of color. The recommendation we have for the city is that it should develop a racial equity-based service utilization strategy. It should, one, include the population estimate of West Hollywood community members, inclusive of people who work in the city but don't live in the city, so non-residents. Two, be informed by government alliance on race and equity principles. And three, incorporate insights from the needs assessment that we've done about service category, interest, and barriers to service. Next slide. For our fourth recommendation, we want to evaluate progress on service utilization strategy with an evaluation plan. Sorry, I keep receiving, yeah. So the problem that we saw is that implementing a racial equity-based strategy for social service utilization requires multiple phases. So one is engagement and collaboration with social service agencies to refine the strategies. Two, education about the new goals and data requirements. And three, evaluation of these strategies. So the recommendation we have for the city is that it should develop an evaluation plan to measure progress towards any racial equity strategy it develops. The evaluation should clearly define evaluation goals, metrics, data sources used to evaluate progress, and schedule for reporting results to the city. Human Services Commission, City Council, and relevant city state. For the fifth recommendation, Brandon is going to present.
Thank you, Patricia. Good evening, everyone. Brandon Harrison, one of the associates on Maroon Society. Happy to be here with you all. Could you advance the slide for me? So for our fifth recommendation, we suggest that you create a centralized information portal about contracted social services. And so the problem that we found is that the social services webpage has valuable information about the city's funded services. But for community members with limited time, computer skills, and English reading comprehension, the process of locating the services, identifying if they qualify to receive the services, and all of the steps necessary to apply was daunting, and a lot of people felt discouraged. And so our recommendation from this problem is to create an information portal on the website that offers clear descriptions of the city's funded services, the qualification criteria, and the application requirements. And in the long term, the city should have an application that allows a person to find out what services they qualify by responding to just a series of automated questions. Advance the slide, please. Thank you. And our recommendation number 6 was to standardize the provider capacity to communicate about services offered. And the problem that we found with this one was that contracted social service providers have a varying level of capacity to communicate with the public and process applications for services. Some agencies provide websites with detailed information, while others have automated steps to apply for the services. Yet others have limited, often confusing and incomplete information on the website about the services and the application process. And so our recommendation would be that the city standardize the information available to community members from contracted provider websites. All providers should clearly describe the services offered, the criteria to apply, the estimated wait time to receive a response, the time to schedule a service. And they should also provide an operational phone number and indicate the hours which folks can call in and calls will be received, and the time to receive a response from those. So I will finish with that recommendation and turn it back over to you, Dr. Sayers.
Thank you, Brandon. Thank you, Patricia and Dr. Brown. I'm going to stop sharing the screen and open it up for discussion.
Thank you very much. I will go around to the commissioners and ask if there are any questions. Commissioner Darvish.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that it's an excellent job in putting the results together. I looked at them over the weekend and then again today, compared to what knowledge that I had before. I think when it was presented last year, I had a lot of questions about the sample size and what is the percentage of population. So just overall, I want to say great job. At first glance, to me, it looks like that the percentage of people of color in our city being, I think, 23% or 28%. And then that is subgrouped by different categories, different people from different backgrounds. And to me, it sounded like, you know, if that's the percentage, then the percentage that used social services was very close, I believe, to that percentage. I just wanted to ask the team members, I don't know which one would be the right person to answer the question. If that's true, I guess we still think that people of color are not utilizing as much services as white people. But when you look at percentages, is very close. But then the other question I have is undocumented residents or people that work in the city. I know many people of color are undocumented. So how do I guess we're not counting them in this percentage because we go by registered people that register in the census process, right? For the city, they have to register and put the race on there. And some people don't put their race on there. They choose not to. Now, I myself, for many years, didn't put my my background on there, just because of the experiences that I've had in the past, and just some of it was me and, you know, what I went through in life. But so I just have that question: how do we count for those people that do not register? So those are the two questions.
Thank you for the question, Commissioner Darvish.
Thank you.
I'll address a little bit of the first question, turn it over to Dr. Brown, and then turn it over to Patricia Ortega to discuss some of the challenges reaching undocumented members of the community, especially those who are primarily monolingual Spanish speaking. So to your first question, it looks like the utilization rate among community members of color is pretty similar to their representation in the population. Currently, community members of color who are residents comprise about 28% of the West Hollywood community. And their utilization rate was about 5% below 28% if we look at social services overall. But based on the way the city defines a community member, we believe that the estimate is much smaller. And so I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that, Dr. Brown, but I just wanted to tee that up.
Sure. First of all, thank you, Adam, for those good questions. I think the point that we're making, but first of all, you're correct. If you look at just the population estimates in terms of the population of people of color within West Hollywood, and you match it up to the population of individuals using services, it does align. So it seems as if there's no under or overrepresentation based upon racial group identification. But one of the things that we did in the survey is we asked people if they needed help with services in the city. And so what we found there was that people of color were more likely to say that they needed help than were non-Hispanic whites. And these differences were more pronounced when you just simply look at African Americans and Hispanics relative to whites. Those groups were significantly more likely than whites to say they needed help. But whites were more likely to apply for services and to receive services than were people of color broadly, and more specifically African Americans and Hispanics. So if you look at the group of people that need help, then we would expect a much higher percentage of people of color receiving services, but we don't. And that's the issue that we wanted to highlight in this report. So that's a good question. I'm glad we could further elucidate this point. And I'll stop there. Go ahead.
And I'd also like to add, just to make sure it was clear, because of the way the city defines community, we know that when we look at people that are non-residents who work but do not live in the city, they tend to be, people of color are overrepresented. It appears just on a cursory look that they are overrepresented, meaning that instead of it being similar, 28% of people that work but don't live, it appears that it's closer to 50% or even greater. We can't say with certainty because we haven't conducted a census of that, but if we just looked at the survey data and those who participated in the survey who worked but did not live in the city, it was 60% of those individuals were people of color that worked but didn't live. And so we believe we believe our survey is representative of the community. And so that's why 28%, or it's really 20%, but 28% is not the figure. It requires further investigation to actually get at what that representation is, that figure of the community members. And that was one of the recommendations that was made. And I will turn it over to Patricia to address your second question about the difficulties and challenges providing services and reaching undocumented and monolingual Spanish and possibly even Russian language speaking community members, but I'm not certain that that's the case.
Hi. So for recruiting and even conducting surveys, it was very hard to get people who were undocumented to do, for example, the focus group. I remember reaching out. I had to reach out like in person. I had to really try to get them to participate. And a lot of them would say yes, and I would have everything scheduled, and then they would just drop because they were kind of scared, and they would ask me, is this going to be shared? So it seemed like there was a lot of hesitancy. It was very difficult. So there, it's just a very hard to reach population. In terms of like the survey, I had to strategize of how to have more monolingual Spanish speakers do the survey, since it was very difficult. I mean, I reached out and went to a lot of the restaurants, and I did a lot of work, went to businesses, try to reach out, hotels. So then I had to kind of change the strategy, because there was, the numbers were not there yet for that population. So then I had to go to where the spots that they normally are in, like, for example, bus stops, and put signs, and, so it was extremely difficult. And it seems like a lot of the hesitancy to do the survey has to do with just not trusting, just like.
Yeah, totally understand that. Yeah.
Very difficult. Yeah.
Yeah. And, I mentioned being in that category, for 40 years as an immigrant, and being interviewed at the immigration office in New York just 8 months after I got escaped my country, and I came on a student visa, and it was a valid visa, but just because of my race, they interviewed me to ask me if I had a round trip ticket to go back, and then my apartment being searched just because of the country that I escaped from. I didn't have any trust, and my situation was a little different, but I know that in that category, a lot of people don't have trust. Maybe that's what we need to work on, a channel that they trust to pull them in and get input.
Absolutely. I also would like to add, I totally forgot, something that was very interesting was that a few of the people that I got to recruit for the focus group, they did mention having multiple jobs, but the jobs, I guess they're independent contractors, a lot of them, and they would have a job one day in West Hollywood, but then they had to go to, Pomona the next day. And it just like, their job and their schedules constantly fluctuate. So they never had time to, it was very difficult to reach them also, because they had multiple jobs and they were so far away from each other. And a lot of them, I would ask them, like, how do you get there? And a lot of them use public transit. So, it's just very time consuming. They have little time. So, yes, it was difficult for many reasons, mainly because of trust. And then also the having multiple jobs and just not having enough time to, yeah.
Thanks very much, Patricia. Leslie, I'm going to put you on the spot, if you don't mind. Would you be able to give us a definition of a community member here?
I'd be happy to. We heard it a couple of times from folks, and I'll reiterate it as well. A West Hollywood community member is more than somebody who simply lives in West Hollywood. It includes people who live in West Hollywood, work in West Hollywood, attend school in West Hollywood, own property in West Hollywood, or spend a significant or majority amount of time unhoused in West Hollywood.
Great. That's a great reminder for some of us old timers and for some of the newer members of the commission also. Thank you very much.
Sure enough.
Okay, next I will go to Commissioner Fryeburg.
Can you come back to me?
Yes. Commissioner Borelli.
When you said old timers, you were looking at Stephen, right? Long timer on the commission, we mean. Thank you all. This is such a great report. I'm sure Dr. Celius knows, and nice to see and meet you others. We love data and we love information, and this really helps inform us as we walk through this process. My first question is, what happens next with these recommendations? Does this go from us to the city council?
Is that going to staff or to Dr. Silius?
Whoever can answer the question.
I can answer something, but maybe David's probably in a better position to speak on it.
I can hop in, no problem. Hi, everybody. This is Katie with Social Services. Unless David, I just saw you pop on.
I can add if needed. Thanks, Katie.
Okay, great. Yeah, no problem. So Dr. Silius and his team will be presenting to the Social Justice Task Force later on this month on the 26th. And then the report will also go to City Council on May 2nd. But the recommendations, Social Services is going to take those recommendations and review them. And we are also planning on incorporating some of the recommendations already into the RFP that we've been discussing tonight, and that Human Services Commission will review and finalize later in the year. And David, I don't know if you want to speak to the recommendations that we have already tried to incorporate in that RFP document.
So thanks, Katie. So we are in the process of exactly doing that. The next steps for staff are that we'll drop in all of the recommendations that were made, all 6, into the RFP document. We'll have a link to the full report. That's true, as folks are aware, with the other initiatives as well, for the Aging in Place, Aging in Community, or the 5-year plan to address homelessness. So there's always a link to the fuller report. But we'll drop, as I said, we will drop in the 6 recommendations. And then we've already began to look at sections in the RFP where we can, specifically call out a recommendation. I think one that's, kind of jumps out at everybody is the opportunity to expand food and nutrition services. So there are things that, are kind of likely, that definitely fit into social services RFP. So when we look at that, when we look at the service utilization plans, when we look at the outreach, the focus on outreach, having outreach focused on community members of color, it's just kind of very likely that that we're able to really call that out and look for those services, to be included in the proposal. And it's not to, it's not also just to put it on the organizations in the RFP, although that is one of the main goals of this needs assessment. It's also for city staff to look at how we might be able to expand our work program to include some of the recommendations as well.
Great, thank you, David, appreciate it. The 2 areas that sort of jumped out at me, like Commissioner Darvish, I read it over the weekend and I read it again today just to really try to absorb these. The first recommendation about awareness. I recently watched last month's meeting that I missed, and was unfortunately still sadly surprised that we have, even among our fellow commissioners and advisory board members, people who don't understand all that is available to them in the city of West Hollywood. It's sad that we've been able to reach a ton of people, and it was heartwarming to hear that with Rachel, with rental assistance, we've got so many new community members who have participated. But it is still, I think, a challenge citywide, even with our mailing that we did in the early days of COVID, to get people to understand all that really is available to them. So I think when we talk about the awareness component, I love the recommendation. I think it's always going to be a challenge. I think about the Chamber of Commerce, of course, reaching the business community in particular. Certainly the Chamber and the businesses were able to rally a lot of employees in the city about minimum wage and hotels. So I think that we certainly can tap into that resource and opportunity to make more folks who work in the city aware of what is available to them. But I think it's always going to be a challenge for us. The second thing I thought of, and this is, we kind of heard it at the end of the public comment in the last section tonight, is really the demand on our providers. I know from my day job, our staff and that work directly with our residents and our partner staff right now are pretty tapped out in food insecurity and mental health, nutrition. All of those areas are where 2.5 years ago, you might not have had to wait too long. There certainly is a lag and a wait right now. And I know we and they are all struggling with the resource, and I hopefully maybe coined a new term, people source, because it really is about having the staff there. So I think, my concern is not overtaxing the providers that we have, and many really do work on very tight budgets. And if the city and the council in particular does want to really take number 6 to a new level, I hope that the city is able to provide additional funding on top of our 5.2 million that we're doing to support our social services providers in taking it to the next level with additional resources, because I think the demand is not going down anytime soon. Number 5, the informational portal. Yes. And I think we can also relate that to Mr. Nash's early public comment. Again, working in the industry, I get that we can't all use the same application process. It just, for legal purposes, for requirements, it's probably a long way away for us to be able to have one centralized application process, but maybe 10 of our social service providers would be able to utilize that same standard application process. So if we're able to get our city website much more user-friendly for the users and have some sort of at least starter standard application, I think that strongly puts us down the road. I want to thank Maroon Society again for such a thorough and really fascinating and not surprising, frankly, report. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Borelli. Commissioner Byers?
Thank you. Yeah, this report's been so fascinating to dive deep into, and I know so many community members are going to be really excited to see this too. There's a hunger for data in this regard, and really grateful that we've seen it presented. I have a couple questions and then just some general comments as well. There was a list provided of proposed new services. Is that an exhaustive list of everything that was heard, or are those things that were said repeatedly? I believe there are 12 items that were included. Yeah.
Correct. So it is not an exhaustive list. That is a list that was curated to the extent that they related best to social services and what would be within the domain of social services. There were a variety of other recommendations, but they would maybe fell into parks or law enforcement or other divisions within the city. So we tailored that list of new services toward social services.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I asked specifically, I noticed that there were a couple quotes that maybe indicated or where things were said. Childcare was an example of sort of a rising cost incurred that people are facing, that I then sort of looked to see if it was proposed as part of new services, and it wasn't. So I didn't know how those dots are being connected, but that helps understand a little bit more. I had another sort of question around the gaps that were experienced. I think it's figure 15 on page 21. There's, maybe it's not as much of a question as a comment, unless I can get a question out of my head around this, but it just feels really dramatic to see that 55% of people can say to themselves and vocalize that they need some sort of help. And then to see that only 9% of that end up receiving any sort of support. I think we've talked before, maybe in reviewing, I can't exactly remember, but in reviewing some contract deliverables, that there was we know that people are applying and then that there's gaps in the applications that are actually being able to receive services. And I just wonder, maybe this is a question for staff, in what ways are we thinking about helping tighten up that conversion rate? Or maybe put differently, when people apply and don't get the services, what is done in that instance to help close that gap?
Who would best answer that, David?
Yeah, I'd like you to, Commissioner Byers, repeat it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, my concern's really just in how do we close these gaps? There's 55% of people need help, 30% of consider applying, only 15% ended up applying, and then 9% receive the services that they're looking for. It feels like we can have the most control between the applications submitted and the services received. And I'm just wondering in how we can think about closing that gap, or what we're doing or could be done.
And I'll also, I have a response, but I'll certainly welcome the GARE team also, who worked the closest with the consultant. But I think when I look at the figure that you're looking at, figure 21, so the largest, the largest step down from, I'm looking at the people of color, need help 55%, and then it drops by 25% to consider applying. So that, to me, that's the first kind of alarming, what are the, and I think that's, what the recommendations are going for. Either that, the information is too difficult to access, or is confusing once you do access it, or, just the numerous barriers that were identified, because, I need help, but this is, I can't do this. You know what I mean? So to me, those recommendations begin to, address these big steps down. Then you've got that 15% drop from consider to applied. So obviously, okay, well, I'm still up for really looking into this, but then we see there must be, difficulties in the application process, or all of a sudden I don't understand if I'm eligible or not. But that, so I think, I'm repeating myself, but I think the recommendations really fit into this. And then as you said, the rather alarming percentage that 55% say they needed help, and then 9% actually, received it. So looking at how the information is provided, I think the recommendation about how are you doing your outreach, how are you focusing, getting the information specifically to community members of color. I think the one thing that, of many, but the one thing certainly that this calls out is that we really need to look at how we do our outreach to our workforce. So that, we can say, and I do say, we did a citywide mailing. The citywide mailing doesn't just go to residents, it goes to all the businesses as well. What happens with that information once it gets into either the business owner or whoever picks up the mail? What happens is that, is that then shared with the employees? So those, to me, those are the kind of the obvious next steps that, okay, we need to really assure that that information is distributed. So, and anyway, those are first impressions from me. And once again, we are working on that RFP document on how best to incorporate that and really call it out. That, the other thing is, it is this, with the RFP, we're looking for proposals. We do look to our agencies to, as you folks have been through this, we expect that there is an outreach plan. Certainly the city, we continue to push out information and look for new ways to do it, but we look to our agencies to do that. So we will tailor that outreach plan and what we're calling out, what we'd like to see with this, in this RFP document specific to these recommendations. And I probably gave too long of an answer, but certainly if Katie or Francisco or Dick want to add on, please feel free.
Katie, are you trying to speak?
Katie, you're muted. Sorry. Katie,
just talking to myself. I was just going to say, I don't have anything to add. David's response was actually exactly what I was thinking. But if the Maroon Society team has anything to add on, feel free.
Sure. Thank you, Katie. Thank you, David. The one thing I would add is that just throughout both phases, the focus group, which is the qualitative phase, and the survey, the quantitative phase, we had to do a lot of convincing to community members of color that they are actually community members. And so a campaign that really raises awareness about what constitutes a community member, especially someone who's not a non-resident, could go a long way in bridging some of that divide, I think, quickly. And I don't know if anyone else on the team had anything to add, but that's what I would add.
Doug, did you have something to say?
I did not, Chair.
Great. I just had one more comment to add, and it sort of goes in line with what Commissioner Borelli spoke of already. But the thing that really spoke so loudly to me, and is something I see reflected in a lot of the service provider work I get to be a part of or am connected to, is that burnout. And I just sort of recognize over the course of the budgetary cycles for social services that there hasn't been a tremendous increase in the amount of funds that we give out, which says to me that we're not supporting, and this is an assumption of making, of course, I don't actually know the line budgets for every staff member working at nonprofits, but that we're sort of helping enforce the stagnation of wages in these nonprofit organizations as well. And as we champion rising livable wages for everybody, I really think that people who are doing this frontline service delivery work are under tremendous pressure and stress, and that we should make sure that we're reflecting the resources we allocate accordingly. And yeah, I just wanted to express that was a pain point that I heard reflected in the presentations earlier, and see in the ways that the barriers that are reinforced are really around also cultural competency and sort of alignment of who is actually being a part of the service delivery model. And I think high, good paying jobs with good benefits, a part of that will help transform the service delivery landscape itself. So just want to be a voice for that. I don't think I have any other questions, but really appreciate this really thorough information.
Thank you, Commissioner Byers. Commissioner Davis.
I'm just going to reiterate the fact that this was one of the most pleasurable reports I have read in a long, long time. It's readable, it's well researched, it's nicely color coded, and but it has a lot of information in here. Some of it that we could have suspected, and some of it that we did not necessarily suspect. Just on page 16, I would like to compliment you for using the words older adult instead of senior. That's from my dear friend Barbara, who is not here tonight, but I also would like to agree with her that I would like to see this more often. It's nice to know that you guys can do it even though the city cannot. Let's see, what else? On page 20, there was a comment down here about the mental health services. I tried twice to get it. It seems that we put barriers in front of people, especially in wait times and return to phone calls, et cetera, et cetera. And I know that possibly the service agency is overwhelmed, yes, but also the person seeking services comes first in my mind. And so we need to be able to get those services, those barriers to service lessened. The staff report mentions several different ones. I'm sure there are more, but they're the thing that I was the most interested in. But then they got the least recommendation throughout the report. So I just don't want them to get lost because I always worry about things getting lost, and I worry about things not getting taken care of. And one of them would be the barriers. We need to bring those down. And wait times and a general way of applying would make sense. I understand Commissioner Borelli about legal requirements and state and federal and but it really comes down to the person that you're trying to do business with and help, and you're not, you need to go to that person. You need to meet the person as they come in. If they're not able to fill out, or if they're not able to handle it, and you just let them walk away, I think you've defeated the purpose of you being there in the first place. So I just want to make certain that that part of it, that component, is kept alive and in front of everyone. and I will do my best to support it. And again, I've read this more than a couple of times. I read it on Friday when I got it. I read it on Saturday again, and then I read it again today. And I was just like, wow, this is so cool, because it says a lot of information, but it's in a very concise way, and it's in a very readable way. And so I would like to thank you, Aaron, and your team for such a good report. And I think I've talked long enough. I can see, as I see Jimmy Palmieri, whenever he starts to dip, I think, okay, it's time for me to stop. All right, but thank you very much again. There's a lot of stuff in here, and we're going to use it as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis. Commissioner Fryeburg, I'm coming back to you now.
Okay. Thank you so much for this presentation and all the information. I mean, it is so informative that I'm going to read it a couple more times. So if I ask you a question, it's only because I need to go through it thoroughly again. There's just so much in here. But thank you so much for all of this. And, you know, anything I say really is just going to be, it's been already said. I think putting everything in one spot in a portal has been mentioned so many times, just simplifying the process of people, you know, when they first get out of the gate and go to the city site and say, how do I figure out how do I do something? You know, just making it easier for them and putting it all in one spot is huge. In this way, they can get an answer to their questions of what they might, you know, qualify for. I did have a question, and this might be a David question. For mailing to people who work in the city, you said you send it to the businesses. Is that the only avenue that the city takes to reach these people?
I was giving that as an example. When we did the citywide mailing, it goes to both residents and businesses, and then just, you know, kind of posing the question, you know, is this being shared with the employees of the business? We also do the mailings through rent stabilization, which goes to you know, both tenants and landlords. We've got a number of different, you know, mailing lists that come from different departments and divisions. But with social services, that citywide mailing is the most comprehensive that we currently have.
And that reaches people who just work in the city but don't live in the city?
No, that's both.
That's what I'm concerned.
So that's, yeah, it's residents and businesses as well.
So there's no way to directly mail anybody that just works in the city. We would have to depend upon the business to pass along the information.
That's currently, yes. And that's, you know, that's why I brought that up, because, you know, we obviously need to figure out how that distribution can be much more effective than just, you know, the person who picks up the mail.
Right. Yeah, because I find even people, residents in the city, it's hard to convince them that there's actually free services. So I can't imagine trying to convince somebody who just comes here and works that there are free services. I can't imagine them even believing that. I've never heard of that, you know, before I lived in West Hollywood. But I think that's about it. Everybody else kind of said what I wanted to say, and, you know, yeah, that's about it. But thank you so much for all the information. It was really, really, you know, an eye opener. And it seems like there's just little fixes that we can do, you know, off the bat, you know, just making it easier for people to apply. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Fryeburg. I think it's my turn, and I would just like to thank Dr. Silius, Dr. Brown, Brandon Harrison, and Patricia Ortega for this amazing report. It is very comprehensive and it's very easily readable, which sometimes reports are not. It takes a lot to understand them. I'm going to just make a couple of comments. I don't have any questions. Some of the things that were pointed out by my fellow commissioners and also by the doctors were we need to let, and thank you, Leslie, for reading the definition. I don't want to get confused here, but we do need to find out somehow, some way to let the people know that they do not just need to be a resident to get the services that Commissioner Fryeburg is talking about, the free services that are available here. And part of it I wrote down is just frustrating to me when someone, and particularly when someone will say to me, well, we don't have that service, or why don't you do anything about this, or why don't you do anything about that? When indeed we do, they just aren't aware of it. So it's always, of course, outreach. And as Commissioner Borelli will tell you, outreach has been something that we have been going on over and over and over for years, both by providers and the city. I mean, some of these services, people need to know that they qualify for services that not only enhance the quality of their life, but that are essential to their life. And this, I think, again, is outreach, but it has to come with folks knowing that these services are available to them. They don't need to live here. I had this conversation this afternoon, and Commissioner Davis, about a year ago, you brought up if folks are making minimum wage and they can't buy lunch, we should be able to provide them with some type of lunch. And indeed, that comes up in this report. So things that were brought up a while back now are coming into fruition or reality, hopefully. That's all I have right here. But I do want to thank you. It's always great to see you, Dr. Sligas, and your team. Always full of information, and always very, very grateful for the work you do.
Thank you.
I now have to correct myself on something. Number 4, new business. There is no new business, but I need to say that out legally. For legal reasons, I didn't say it out loud simply because there wasn't any new business. Okay, now there's no excluded consent. I'm just saying that out loud. Steph, did you have anything that you wanted to add before they leave, Dr. Salias and his team leave?
I'll defer to the GARE team real quickly. I just want to say thank you, thank you for the work. They worked very closely with the GARE team. I also want to say thank you to that team. They took this and really ran with it and dove into it. I think that I'm sure that we were just as, informed. Some of the things, I'll be honest, it's not easy to hear, but we do hear it. And our job really is to, as you've all stressed, how do we take these recommendations? How do we convey the recommendations in the RFP document first off, but then also just with our work in the division, and then collaborating with other departments, communication and others, to really get the word out and look at the possibilities of having a portal, having a centralized system. So thank you. It was eye-opening for staff as well. And I'll turn it over to the GARE team.
Can I ask just one more question really quick?
Sure.
In the report, it's mentioned that they're looking for affordable parking. How much is the average that they're paying for parking? Does anybody know?
Would that be a Francisco question?
It's on a figure 14.
Yeah, I don't have, sorry about that. I don't have an answer to that question, but we can certainly look into it and ask people in the parking division just for an average of what parking rates are in the city. But I don't have that answer in front of me right now.
Okay,
so can you send that to staff to get back to the commission?
Definitely.
On behalf of Commissioner Fryeburg's question, thanks. David, who else did you want to speak from staff?
I'm happy to jump in.
Thank you, Katie.
As a member of the GARE team for social services. I was just going to say, just wanted to wrap up by saying thank you to the Maroon Society team. This report is hugely informative. And I think someone on the commission had mentioned, not all of the results are surprising. And I think that was definitely the case for social services staff with some of the recommendations. But what we wanted out of this report and what Maroon Society helped us do was to get feedback directly from our community members of color, specifically about their needs and service gaps. And so with their help, we have that information. We have a path forward, and we're really excited to continue working with the commission in order to implement these recommendations and better serve all of our community members. So just want to say thank you again to Maroon. Thank you to the rest of the social services team, and then also thank you to the commission for having us tonight.
Anyone else on staff like to speak or make a comment or give any information? No? Okay, thanks very much. Next up is items from staff. So David, do you want to start?
We have a couple things. I'm gonna, if Derek, if you want to jump on first and talk about the resources.
Sure. So we activated weho.org/weho response in late February in response to the war in Ukraine. This website lists organizations that are providing support and humanitarian assistance directly to refugees and for folks who decided to stay within the country. We vetted each agency through their tax forms and also through their ratings through Charity Navigator so that community members can feel safe donating to these international organizations. The page is also translated into Russian so that our Russian-speaking community could also participate. So the short link is weho.org/weho responds, which will link directly to the social services page, which is resources and support for Ukrainian refugees. Thank you.
And then I just wanted to remind commissioners we'll be right back here in 2 weeks. There are 2 meetings in April, and the second meeting, the agenda looks like there will be a discussion on funding priorities, and you will have close to the final draft of the RFP document. There will be opportunity for input, obviously, from the commission. We'll bring it to you. We'll be able to make, some, if there are revisions to be made, because then we will be taking it to council on May 2nd for their approval. We will also have the report from TEEP on their progress towards goal, and we will have another training session in preparation for your review of the RFP proposals. We'll go over the Exhibit B budget justification, and we'll have the presentation from the block by block ambassadors. So another kind of packed meeting. So thank you for all of your attention and time tonight. It's appreciated. Anything else, Leslie or other staff?
David, can you say that? I know it's in our package. I just don't want to look through it right now. When is the next meeting?
April 26th.
Okay.
Tuesday, 6 p.m.
Did everyone get that? Great. Okay, I will now go. Leslie, did you have anything to say? Okay.
Nothing from me, thank you.
I'll now go to commissioners. Sam Borelli, you were waving your hand before. Were you saying goodbye to people, or did you have something to say, as sometimes you do?
Jimmy, I'm so sorry. There's a public comment item.
Okay. Are there public comments?
We don't have any public comments signed up, but I just want to ask if there's anyone who has a comment, if you would just use the raised hand feature and you'll be called upon. So does anyone have a public comment?
I actually did see someone have their hand up. Maybe they put it back down.
Okay, it looks like we have no hands raised, so you may proceed.
Chair Palmieri?
Yes.
Sorry, I had one other item. I wanted to make sure that folks knew that our director, Christoph Schroeder, attended the meeting tonight. And just as I think many of you have met Christoph, but for folks who haven't, Director of Human Services and Rent Stabilization. I just appreciate his presence this evening.
Thank you very much, David, and thank you, Chair Palmieri and commissioners. Very briefly, for those of you who don't know me, I've been with the city for about 25 years. I've served in various capacities throughout the organization. In the last year and a half, I took over the director's role of this department, which I'm very honored to do, working with these great staff that support the excellent work that you all do. So it was great to observe this meeting. I think it was very informative and again, very appreciative of the work that you do. Thank you.
Thank you for visiting. Borelli?
Yay, back to me. I was waving goodbye at the Maroon Society folks. That's what I was doing. The only thing I have, and if I apologize if this happened prior to my triumphant return, some of us found out earlier today that community member Bill Gordon passed away back in November. If we hadn't previously adjourned in his memory, I would ask that we adjourn in his memory tonight. Great person, really dedicated to so many things, a quiet giant among us who really cared about others, served on the LGAP for a long time, and probably did a lot more behind the scenes than many of us know. So I ask that we adjourn in memory of Bill Gordon. See you all in 2 weeks.
Commissioner Fryeburg.
I just had another question for the city about parking. Do we give parking passes to just workers, people who work in the city? Or is that only for residents?
I think if I'm only aware of parking passes for residents. I think would have to be arranged through their, their employer, but I'm happy to touch base with the manager of parking services, get more information.
Thank you. I also wanted to follow up with that report on sexual assault and support services. Is there any status update on that? Because we had a public safety, transgender, and LGAB. We're concerned about support services.
So I followed up Commissioner Fryeburg with public safety. And I want to make sure that I got your request correct, because I asked about statistics reporting, which are public safety, and the sheriffs do report on statistics regarding sexual assault and other offenses on the website. So I can get a link to where those stats are provided. As you know, potentially, as you know, they provide updates on crime statistics at each of the public safety meetings. So I'll get that link. And then as far as the question about support services for community members who've experienced sexual assault, it is through currently, those services are provided through contracts that sit in the public safety division. And so it's not to answer your question, but if you could elaborate on what you're looking for a report.
I think, just to get an idea of, number-wise statistics, yeah, we can look at, the public safety reports on it. But the, information, just connecting both, like this, and then the services that are provided and what's needed, because it seems like everybody's asking, public safety and transgender.
Commissioner Fryeburg, you keep going in and out. You're muting and not muting.
The public safety and transgender.
You're out again.
I don't know why it keeps doing this. The public safety and transgender had put it number one on their input for us to look into and to look into support services. So I just want to make sure that, we have all the information and that we can actually maybe do something about that. I think also I wanted to know if there were any reports on domestic violence. I know the city of Los Angeles, they have about 151 calls a day on domestic violence. So I'm not sure, what's going on in our city with that and support services, because I know it also turns into, people who are unhoused. I think it's about 30% of the people who are unhoused in LA County come from domestic violence situations. So I was wondering if maybe we had a report on that, so we get information on that as well to make sure that we're giving people services on that. Is there something like that out there?
Well, absolutely. This is a little bit of a tangent, but yes, I hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
When we went to each of the boards and commissions, you are correct. We heard that, priority was for additional support services for folks who've experienced either sexual assault, domestic violence. So we did hear that. You'll see when we bring that RFP document, that is called out as one of the priorities for proposals for additional services. We've had discussions on the city side because, as I mentioned, those contracts currently sit in public safety. We've had discussions on the city side about bringing those contracts into social services. So we'll have a more definitive answer on that when we bring that RFP document. So anyway, just to frame, yes, we heard that. Yes, that's will be one of the priorities listed for the proposals. And then I'll follow up again with our to get the link and see what I can get as far as statistics for both DV and sexual assault. And and I do want to say I apologize for you and I went back and forth for a month for some of your follow-ups, and it was not unnoticed. So I probably just need to give you a call instead of emailing. But yes, I will follow up on those statistics for you as well.
Okay, thank you. And one more follow-up is with Derek. Is he still here? I wanted to ask him if he had any updates on fentanyl, because the DAA came out today with a report about how it's killing more people than guns and car crashes combined. And it's gone up 26%. So I'm wondering how it's affecting our residents, if it's affecting our residents. If there's any update on that.
I can get some more information from being alive and what they're seeing on the ground at their syringe exchange. Right now, every Saturday, they are located at the out of the closet parking lot, and they're handing out naloxone to people and talking to folks who are using, and also encouraging people to exchange syringes. So let me get some more information. I will report back to the commission.
Okay, thank you. And that's it.
Okay, Commissioner Byers, did I call on you yet?
Not yet. Thank you so much. I had a question around Ambience Transportation. I'm just curious if there's a way I can see a little bit more detail around how those costs break down based on the comments from the, I believe it was David Nash. I was sort of understanding and following that it sounds like a limited number of trips that you can take and or a limited number of miles and or a limited number of credits, and those may not be combining in the best way possible. I just want to see if you can point me in the right direction to see that a little bit more clearly. That would help.
Is Francisco still here?
I think we lost our GARE team, and both Francisco and Doug were with the GARE team. But yes, we can follow up, Commissioner Byers. And we did have an update on the on-call program that came just a couple of months ago. We'll review
I can
that
look back
again.
there. That's helpful. Okay.
Yeah, but
perfect.
We will relay that to both Francisco and Doug.
Thank you.
Commissioner Byers, just for your information, it's $8 for $50 worth of credits and $16 for $100 worth of credits. And there's a 10-mile radius limit.
Perfect. This is great. Thank you so much, Chair Palmieri. Fantastic. No, I just wanted to make a comment also. I know the Public Safety Commission and City Council meetings have been having a lot of conversations just around aligning resources with service delivery expertise. And I've been following those conversations, and I'm grateful to the community members who continue to sort of have that conversation in the city. I think I'm good, although I did have one clarifying question around the RFP process. So is my understanding correct that at the next meeting this month, we will be looking at the RFP application before it goes to council for final review, and then it goes out to the community? Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Commissioner Darvish. Thank you, Commissioner Byers.
Thank you. I had a question about an item that came up regarding Wi-Fi access for older adults and some of our disabled population. And they also had brought up transportation challenges. I guess we have a contracted services part was due, I think, to labor sort of challenges for drivers that you've just seen in regular Lyft and Uber trying to get a ride. There was a delay a few months ago, but overall they have voiced some concerns about not having connectivity, Wi-Fi available to them for some again disabled and older adults. And then for transportation, they mentioned that they call and they have to schedule in advance, and then due to the backlog, I guess, of the drivers that are not available, there were some challenges. So those two items I wanted to make sure we kind of keep on the agenda or address. if possible. And then the last item I wanted to adjourn in recognizing April 11th, which was yesterday, as a National Pet Day. I think as a community in West Hollywood, pets and wildlife are part of our life. You see birds nesting now and squirrels and many other creatures or animals in our city that makes it beautiful, and wanted to recognize that. And also, I don't know if it's appropriate for us to look into some of the needs for those many of the wildlife. Obviously, our pets are taken care of by us. I know, like in Beverly Hills, I checked, and there's they allow poison boxes for squirrels, which kind of breaks your heart. I didn't know that. I thought it was just for rats and that was it. But the companies are providing those poison boxes. I'm not sure if West Hollywood banned those or they're not allowed here in the city. But just overall, I wanted for us in the future to have a look at our friends that are can't help themselves, that are making sort of the beauty, making our city more beautiful and enjoyable for all of us. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Darvish. Commissioner Davis, did I call on you yet?
No, sir, you did not. And I probably wouldn't have let you get by with it. But I have a really quick question for staff, and that is and I'm kind of a procedural nut, and I would like to know why the approval of the minutes got put under the consent calendar. And then when Jimmy started the meeting, he didn't recognize it or didn't know it happened either. So it wasn't conveyed to the commission. And so I would like to know why.
Absolutely. First, before I jump in, if Jenny is still on the meeting, Jenny.
Hi, everyone.
There we go.
I missed the agenda review today, but the reason the agenda is updated, we are aligning with our bylaws agenda order. So we worked with our city clerk to make sure everything matches the agenda listed in the bylaws. So we moved a couple of things around where it's aligned with it.
Okay. For some reason, I knew that was going to be part of the answer, but
No.
I just want to say that it immediately it causes an issue. Like if a person isn't there and they need to abstain, Commissioner Borelli was like the very first test case. He gets reappointed and missed the very next meeting. So the thing is that if a person needs to do a conversation about the minutes from the previous meeting, they're going to have to get in there too quickly before it gets approved, or they don't notice it. So, and I think the minutes are actually rather important. And I'm thinking also that commissioners, given their druthers, might think, oh, it's in the consent calendar, I don't need to worry about it any longer. So I'm not certain that this is a good idea. I don't know whom I would address my concern to. But if it's going to be a regular basis, what's going to happen is you're going to have a commissioner pull it and put it back in the back part of the agenda, which is going to defeat the purpose. Because I was tempted to pull it tonight, to be perfectly honest. And then I thought, okay, I'm just going to wait until the end in my comments and then bring this up. So
Commissioner Davis, these are all great concerns. Council has their minutes approved under consent with all the other items. It could be a bigger discussion with staff, depending on what you all want. It's just better aligned procedurally, but I wouldn't.
Well, I can still pull it. I mean, that's the problem is that it seems to be self-defeating in my opinion. And council runs in a very different way than the commission does. If it were up to them, they probably would put everything under consent and just say it was, done and have a nice day. So it was a concern to me, and that's why I wanted to bring it up.
Thank you for your concern.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. We worked with our city clerk in making sure the agenda was aligned, because there were a couple of changes with adding the land acknowledgement on it. and just wanted to make sure everything looks per our bylaws. We can follow up with city clerk and see if we could put it back, but you all are here from the beginning to the end of the meeting. And if you pulled the item from consent, everyone should still be here and you could review the minutes. I think overall it's a group discussion. So you all are welcome to see if you like this process or you don't, and we can follow up with city clerk.
And it may be just because I've been around for so long, I don't like change. In the agenda part of it, it concerns me because I think it starts to narrow the discussion and narrow what we pay attention to as a group, and it is a concern.
I completely agree, but as you're going through your RFP process, it could be a little bit easier if you could all review the minutes ahead of time.
I hear you on that. It's always easier, but I don't believe in easier is the best always for a public body. In my opinion, easier is actually not a very good idea. It would be easier for all of us if we could just send in our comments and not have to show up. So, I mean, there are many ways that this could be done, I think, in a better way. And it would be nice maybe in the future if people in the city were going to do this, if they like put out some kind of feeler. And I'm taking up too much time for something that I didn't really mean to. So I will work, I'll actually contact the city clerk myself as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis.
And nothing else.
Okay. Jenny, maybe I can just ask one question on that.
It looks like David has his hand raised. Maybe he has a comment as well.
Okay, David.
Just very quickly. First, yes, Commissioner Davis, we can follow up with city clerk and voice your concerns. I believe you could approve that. Another alternative would be to approve the consent calendar, noting a revision to the minutes with whatever the correction might be. It doesn't take away from your ability to revise the minutes if we've done something incorrectly. So you could do it without, completely pulling it, and or that's your third option. Pull it out of consent. If you look at it, it's like, okay, staff just really missed the boat on this. Then I would say pull it, and it could be on items that have been pulled from consent. But I think you've got a few options. But first off, we will definitely touch base with the city clerk. Doesn't stop you from reaching out directly. But I think you could make those revisions and still approve it as amended.
If I may, just one more, just when we're starting the meeting, people are a little on the confused side. Even when I was chair, it would be sometimes when I'm starting the meeting, I'd be a little confused about what comes first and what comes second. And so when you put something like that there, and then you have a commissioner who's missed a meeting, or you've got a commissioner who said, oh, you know what, I didn't say that. You're going to start off the meeting right off the bat with a bunch of I don't know, comments that wouldn't necessarily be a problem if it was just an item as we moved along. You see my point?
Noted. I do.
Thank you. I'll be quiet now.
Jenny, can I ask you a question on that?
Yes, sir.
So tonight I knew that there was someone that needed to abstain, and I said it 3 times. Is this the point where someone abstains? Do I say that every time, or do what if a commissioner doesn't abstain and we are going beyond and saying, okay, well, that's consent calendar, and then we
Chair, we'll follow up with city clerk and see if there's a easier route, if there's what our options are. This way we can move forward and answer some of these questions.
Great.
I don't want to assume. We want to make sure everything moves smoothly moving forward with everyone's concerns in mind.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I don't have anything except I too want to echo my condolences to Bill Gordon's family. I was on LGAB with him for many years, and as Sam said, he was a quiet giant, and I always said he fought with his brain. He didn't fight with his mouth, and he was one of the more brilliant men that I've worked with on boards and commissions. And as a newbie, If I had any questions or concerns, he would always meet me at the Silver Spoon, which is no longer there, for a cup of coffee to let me know what my concerns were and if he could help. So I'll miss him, and I just can't believe that it happened in November, but I didn't know. And with that, I think we will adjourn until April 26th at 6 p.m. Thanks, folks.